Hello and welcome to the Rainbow Room International podcast channel. As those viewers that have been watching, not listening, will notice that I'm in the wrong seat today. Reason being is that it's actually my podcast. It's my one today. It's my episode. So the question has been from inside the company who was going to do my interview. And really, I could only pick two people. And it'll become apparent in the second one. But the first one had to be probably the reason why I got into the brand and the career in the first place. So my interviewer is the one and only Mr. David Nicholson. Today's podcast has been sponsored by Mataki Scissors, and I'm an ambassador for the brand, and I've been using them now for about 7 months, and they have been amazing. The fact that they're a British-based company, the fact that we can pick up the phone and work with them and we can get everything sharpened with them has been absolutely unique. So today's podcast is brought to you with the help of Mataki Scissors.
All right, well, hi there everybody. I'm David. I've been tasked with questioning Riccardo, learning a bit about his background and where he fits into what we've done as a company and how we've grown over the years. So to get back to the real nitty gritty, we have the obligatory which chocolate do you like? And Riccardo being Riccardo, he's gone all bougie with the choices for himself this time, where we have the Whisper Gold.
Yeah.
And a luxury bar of
Now, wait a minute.
chocolate.
To forgive myself, I go to the same petrol station on the way here to get the chocolate, and there was 2 empty boxes of Lindors, so that was the reason why we've obviously went for the giant excellence, and Rainbow Room International commitment to excellence, the whole shebang. So needless to say, I'm going to go with the big Lind one. So
Right, that's fine. Well, I think it's prudent to not eat this at the moment, Riccardo, because it's going to distract you.
Right,
From
knew that was happening.
The interview. So
I'm getting hit with that one.
take your gold.
William gets the spare one. That's his payment for having to sit and listen to us talking for 5 hours.
All right. So, without any further ado,
Right.
let's get cracking. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us, what made you start in Rainbow Room? What made you think about doing hairdressing? I know, by the way.
By the way. Well, it kind of obviously the whole school thing. Kind of even going back further, like and starting off at sort of in school and not knowing kind of what you do and what you wanted to be. I had no idea, and I tried everything. I had a go at everything. Obviously, I worked in mum and dad's chip shop, so working with the public and doing all that. I was basically conceived to work behind an ice cream machine. So as soon as I was tall enough to stand on iron brew crates and reach into the fridge, that was me. So been working with the public all my life, and then at school it was kind of, family had an American drum and bugle corps marching band, so I had a go at trying to do that, and that led into kind of playing American football and had a go at that. And when I say playing American football, I stood about a lot watching other people play American football. I didn't. That was rubbish, but I loved it. Still love it. It's still one of my passions. But I was hopeless at that. And then my pals were all musicians, so I tried to join a band and do all that. So kind of school was all right, and like every hairdresser, could have tried harder. If they'd have concentrated in class, they would have been great. Could apply himself, but they weren't ready for people like us, I don't think, in high schools in the 80s. So I don't know. I don't know where it came from. And then obviously started coming as a client. I had this unbelievable hairdresser that I used to get my hair cut with, by the name of David Nicholson.
Oh, that's me. Yeah.
Needless to say. And I was just walking past Royal Exchange Square at the time, and a friend of mine was like, you should go in there and get your hair cut. And that was 1988. I went in, and so that was like every time the band had a concert, I would save up and pester my mum to get my hair cut, do that, and then eventually I'd finished 5th year, hires, done all that, and I went to Reese Princess Square. So Princess Square must have opened, what, 89? 89, right about then. And I'd got tons of clothes. Mum had bought me a suit and a coat and all the shebang, surprisingly enough. And I went in there and asked him for a Saturday job. And he was like, no, we're not looking for anybody. And thank God, you know, you think of all the casualties of the rag trade that you know, and what they went through over the years, that he said no to that. And then I reckon I was in getting my hair cut the next week. And then it was just a case of asking you, how'd you become a hairdresser?
Yeah, I mean, I remember you coming in. I mean, at that point, I'd probably been in the company around a year. So, you know, I was still building a column. But I've got very clear memories of you sitting there in your school uniform, you know, just coming out of school, and he's just got this Titian,
Yes.
rich Titian,
Dark,
curly hair,
dark auburn.
we touched the Mick Hucknalls, but we managed to kind of sort that. And then it didn't seem that long after coming in for cuts that you then, you know, you approached, you were just talking through the haircut about, I'm thinking about this and that, and I do remember having the conversation about hairdressing, and I've always been quite honest with people if they're thinking about doing it. It's only a great job if it's the kind of thing, if you enjoy people, you enjoy change and all the challenges that you get. And at that point, I think we either didn't need anybody at the salon that I was working in, so I don't remember the details of how you ended up in Buchanan Street, but I think for our friendship over the decades, it was a good thing to know.
Well, that's what happened. That is what happened. So when I got my interview, and so that was in Buchanan Street, but it was with Linda then.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it wasn't Linda Bardetti that I grew up under. And went, and I didn't even know there was a salon in Buchanan. I went into 15 for my interview and went, oh no, it's over in Buchanan Street. Like, failed already. Didn't even know there was one there, and went up the stairs, and as we all did, get shouted at the desk. You know, it's like, you know, get put down into this massive salon. And Linda came, took me into what was then Alan's office for my interview. But they explained on the day that because I was a client of 15's, that I would always have been ending up in Buchanan Street. They were trying to offer me, Paisley was still opened at the time.
That's right, yeah.
And because I grew up in Houston, they were trying to offer me Paisley, and I'm like, no, I'm here to work in the town, you know, I'm here to work in Glasgow, that's what I want to do. So from day one, even before, like everybody, the induction on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you were off on the Thursday. No, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you were off on the Friday, and then you got to go to your salon on the Saturday morning. But I'd known from day one that it was going to be B Street for me. So,
right. And do you remember your first day?
Oh, totally. I remember my first day in the academy and down the stairs in 15, because there was 16 of us that started that day, and there was a particular guy who'll come up again in one of the other questions that he just went over to the products and took the can of mousse and, oh, this stuff's brilliant, and scooshed himself a big, you know, and the rest of us are looking over going, he's crossing some boundaries already, and they've not come out to say hello to us yet, and he's scrunching into his hair. So that was kind of my first memory of that. And then, and I still quote my induction to this day. Alan and Linda were, you know, really, really thorough that week. It was amazing, to the point where we've now all pestered them to actually bring some of that information back. And that was amazing. And then the first day in Buchanan Street, well, one, I was late because there was no buses on a Saturday morning from Houston. So, you know, why not start as you meant to go on, as I did. But so I was late, get in, and I knew after the first 15 minutes of being in B Street that I was going to do it forever. I knew it was epic. It was the right level of organised chaos that somebody like myself could thrive in and cope with, you know.
Okay. And again, influences, you know, you talked about Linda, about interviews. I mean, you know, just when you look back, you know, just through your training, and just not just your training to cut hair, colour hair, but, you know, just the training for managing teams, learning how to sort of run and function and grow a business. And, you know, who have been, you know, like your mentors, people that you kind of look up to, that you would use for advice.
Well, that was, again, the one thing that's been coming through all the podcasts is this idea of us being this non-related, dysfunctional family business. And the feeling and the vibe that I got from Rainbow Room International was the same as watching my dad and his brothers build the businesses that they had off the back of their dad building the businesses in the first place. And for me, it was, I mean, I'll argue, right, and I know obviously you're biased at 15, right, but that period of the 90s in Buchanan Street and that 25 sections and where you worked and the people that were in there at the time and the stylists that were in there at the time and the amount of clients that were getting done, it was impossible not to be inspired. There was so many different characters, different individuals, different hairdressers, different hairdressing styles getting done under the banner of that. Obviously, it was Alan to a certain extent. I mean, one stylist came up to me and said, what's your goals at a hairdressing? I'm like, well, I want a Ferrari. She's like, oh, you've picked the wrong career. And I'm going, well, the guy at the top of the salon's head to toe and Comme des Garçons and drives an M11. So you can stay down here moaning your face off, but I'll copy the big man up there, So very quickly, the waistcoats were on and you were kind of sort of copying him and doing that. So he was obviously a massive role model, obviously yourself, because I would still make a point of getting over and coming into 15 and getting that vibe as well, because yourself and John were always that kind of cool big brother vibe that you always wanted to hang about with, and you were always seeking validation from you guys, and then in Buchanan Street there was a couple of stylists as well that you were like, well, if they think I'm cool, like Tommy and Joanna and all that, if you did a haircut and Joanna said it was good, that was like, can't believe that. But Coco was there when I started.
That's right. Yeah.
And Coco was just Coco, right? Exactly as she comes across, and she made a point of honing in on my group of assistants. There was Carol and there was Violet, and there was Marina as well, and they were all really into looking after us as well. Once we knew what we were doing, sort of Thomas and Joanna kind of took interest in whether we could help them and all that. And then finally it was like, well, if Tina and Linda either A, don't throw you out the staff room, or B, look at you and ask you to do something, then you must be doing it right,
I think that was the thing. Buchanan Street always had just those different kind of disciplines and cultures where you had your real old school, just really talented, from the 15-minute appointment days, and obviously things had changed, and it was just a much stronger melting pot of differences. But you were probably one of the few that did cross that imaginary barrier to 15,
definitely.
because there was always very much a kind of, Buchanan Street was where everybody made the money, and 15 in Linda's salon was where all the creative stuff went on. And all I ever wanted to achieve with 24 was, could you get the mix? Could you have both?
Of course.
Could you have people that could be creative and have great incomes and have the lifestyles that they would want to do? And that's always been the drive. I'd say to a certain extent, George Square, as they have changed over, they have also, there is all that creative age.
But that's it. I think, we all grew up with that, and so that is the exact influence that we took. We're going, right, well, how do we mix that?
You just want both.
Professionalism, that kind of money culture, but then also that creative culture. And I guess because we're all the product of those two, we managed to do that. But I mean, you take even just the daft things, like Linda Berdetti was on point every day, like just immaculate, right? You wouldn't have walked into a clothes shop or a hotel or a restaurant and get looked after better than she looked. She looked better than anybody in the telly, right? So if anybody was reading the news or doing the weather or was a television presenter on breakfast television, they weren't as sharp as Linda. They didn't look that way. They certainly weren't wearing as many diamonds as her. But and she was an absolute, she was a machine. She was an absolute machine. But again, probably didn't get the credit for actually being that great a hairdresser as well, because she was everything was it was perfect. Everything was perfect. Tina could just do everything that you thought was hard in 5 minutes. And that was unbelievable. And again, Alan, everybody just sees the aftermath, but he did walk the talk. He was in doing the clients. He was doing all the punters. All of the things he said he did actually do, including all the things that he would abdicate and palm off to assistants and do. You know, he says we all do too much now because he would, well, I wouldn't have done that, and he didn't. But it was, you know, you get excited talking about it. There was I very much think there's energy in buildings. And I think there was definitely an energy.
Yeah, there was
in that.
always a vibe in Buchanan Street.
Always. But you talking about 15 and coming over to 15, obviously it was easy for me because I'd been as a client, so that was fine. Obviously, I did the paid course, so I was training all day on a Wednesday. So again, the familiarity was there. But I made a point. I had to take over for Remo as Linda's assistant. So big Remo Pontiero, the big man,
because
right?
I had Remo as a stylist for me at some point.
So, you know, big, obvious Italian-looking guy who had hands like shovels and just, he would do this head massage and the clients would be sliding off the seats in love with the guy, you know, and then they were getting Peely Wally Riccardo with Jeremy Beadle's wee tiny hands, you know, and I've got to take over. So I'm like, I need to be brilliant at shiatsu. I really know that. So you had a stylist, and she was leaving soon, but she'd been one of the ones that had been trained with the Japanese guy to teach everybody. She was particularly good. So any downtime, I'd go over and go, right, you need to make sure I'm on point with this and I'm brilliant, because if I'm taking over and these clients, I'm coming out instead of Remo, they're going to be instantly disappointed, you know. So I had to do a better head massage than Remo would do and surprise these clients.
And I think that, I mean, that the competitiveness, that's what I kind of see. I can see it starting to come back with some of the youngsters in the company, but you know, there's been a real period of years where it's kind of been competitive is frowned upon a little bit. You know, it's seen as maybe being slightly vulgar or just slightly. Everybody wants to feel great, but they don't want to feel more great than somebody else because they might be uncomfortable, and you know, it's human nature.
I didn't feel like ultimately I was competing. It was the idea that I'd been handed this ball, you know, and I had to make sure that I looked after it as well as everybody else had looked after it, and then move the thing forward. So it was kind of like, wow, I'm whatever's throughout the career and all the different bits that we'll go through, whatever bit was then handed to me, it was like, right, well, I need to do this to the best of my ability. I need to do it as good as the person before me, and then hopefully move it on. But then revel in the fact that the next person that takes it on after me is hopefully going to be better, stronger and faster than when I did it.
And that's the right way. It's what you see from all the different podcasts and all the meetings, and everybody's coming from different places. Yeah. But the purpose is exactly the same in what we're all doing. And you're talking about Linda Berdetti and just that smartness and just walking the talk. I mean, when I started as a stylist, Alan he was over a few days. I can't remember, maybe a couple of days a week. He would be working in that salon as well as Linda, and you know, you were beside him, and sometimes, you know, you would get a bit. You're always going to get more stressed when you're the new guy. And I, you know, as I'd probably said in my podcast, you know, I didn't know shiatsu was, that was it. That was the first day of it happening. Right. And I was the only one doing it because that's what I get taught. That's what I did. But yeah, he always looked the part. And Linda, I mean, even now, it's
just hilarious. So,
oh, sorry, that's the police are here for Riccardo.
We normally, listen, viewers, we normally stop when the sirens go off, because we're not actually very far from a hospital, and we just decided, seeing it was David
police
and I,
station.
David and I, we're just going to leave them on, and we're not going to worry about it. So we're not going to stop. We're just going to let. It's actually the hottest day of the year, and we're dressed up like idiots in this podcast. So we're just leaving the windows open. You'll hear the noise. Don't worry about it.
Sirens.
Sirens.
That's right. Okay, officer. I mean, Riccardo. All right. Again, when did you just get that? You know, so you kind of go through your training, and then you start as a style. You know, was there a point when you're sitting there cutting hair where you just get that moment of clarity where you go, I'm glad I made the right decision.
I've got this.
I'm happy doing this. I can see where I'm at. I can see that there's all this stuff I'm still got to learn, but I want to learn it, and I know who can teach me it. And you know,
I had a couple of sliding door moments with that. One was my first 1-to-1. I was still an assistant, And so the guy that was doing the squishy with the foam and the induction, he was the son of a particular old school West Coast hairdressing family. He was really a stylist. He'd qualified. He knew everything he was doing, and he was either coming to just steal all of Rainbow Room's ideas and take it back to his mum and dad's place, or maybe he was wanting to get away from. They would have been classed as an old school hairdressers. Right. They were probably still doing a lot of setting and permanent and all that. So I don't know whether he was doing that, but he'd already ruffled too many feathers. You know, he was disagreeing with stylists during their consultations and all that kind of stuff, right? So he was doing all that. And he went in for his 1-to-1 before me, came out, went to the lockers, got his jacket, and that was it. He was gone. Alan told him to beat it, right? And I'm standing going, I was next in, I'm like, I'm about to get the sack from a job that not only did my mum give me £800 to basically buy my job, I'm not getting paid. I'm going to actually get the sack for not having a real job. And because at the time, I loved it, but I was rubbish. Right, I was good at all the, you didn't need to teach me to look after a client, look after the salon and the busyness and cups and tea and all this stuff, right? But hairdressing, it was terrible. We were still doing pleats and perm rollers, and it was a nightmare. So of course, get into the office with Alan, right? How do you think you're getting on? And I'm like, oh, can I be honest? And he's like, well, yeah. And I went, well, I'm pretty shit, ain't I? And I'm like, he's going, what do you mean? I went, well, he says, well, what do you do at training? I says, well, I go over in the morning and I've got my SAM homework and I get my SAM homework corrected and then get my salad all out. And he says, well, what are you doing just now? Well, I'm perming now. He says, and when do you start? I says, well, I get my rollers out and I start. He says, and when do you finish? I says, well, usually when you're switching the lights off and it's time to go home. And he just leaned over the desk and went, Jink, I don't fucking notice. Right, and I'm sitting like, so one, I'm in, he swore. So that's it. The guy's telling me the truth. He's completely honest. I am now hook, line and sinker a member of Rainbow Room International because I don't believe anybody that doesn't swear. And then he's just like, so shut your face, keep doing what you're doing, it'll be fine. And came back out of there. Got through all that bit, and then they handed me a head sheet. Because I thought you were all magicians. Like, you're all just lifting this bit of hair and cutting it, and it would all do. I couldn't believe how it was done, right? It blew my mind. And then somebody handed me a head sheet and the light bulb went, because I loved it. I wasn't that great at it, but I loved doing take a drawing at school. I really, really enjoyed it and couldn't believe that you drew a haircut the same way you drew a house. Right? That absolutely blew my mind and made complete sense. I'm not a just because guy. I'm a why and how guy. And that absolutely just, and as soon as that bit of paper came out, I'm like, oh, I've got this. This bit I've absolutely got. And then got through that. Qualifying, we used to have to do 300 models.
Sweet.
So you had 8 weeks to do 300 free haircuts to then get the job. And it was that brutal. If you didn't get the 800, you didn't get the 300, you weren't getting the job, and you were pulling, customers at the chippy, mums dragging people up to St Alphonsus and the Barras to get their haircut. Anybody and everybody to get in and get qualified. And I would say, like most people, it's that first year. You can obviously, we're the generation that we did all get promoted within the sort of first year. And once you got your senior stylist and you started seeing all your peers and the people that you expect looking at your haircut and liking it or commenting on it, then I'm that guy now. I'm that person.
Good.
Right. Is that okay?
That's it. I think moving on from that, we're at the sort of point. You qualify, you get through all the challenges with training, and then you've got all the challenges with being a stylist. And then beyond that, everyone has there's opportunities, whether it's moving into managing, helping support assistants, teaching, art team. Art team's a big, big part of our company. And it became a massive part for you. So tell us about how you got involved with the art team, because generally for all of us, it was brutal.
Yeah.
It was a last minute.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a disaster.
There's the thing.
Come out of this disaster. in a good way.
I
How was your disaster?
my disaster started with the first. We had a assistance presentation for our parents in the basement in 15, and you'd just done the magic roundabout for alternative.
Right.
So that was, as you were talking about, you know, all the monofibre, all the hair gel, wrapping it around the brushes and the poles,
Tractor,
and get the
enough
curls,
tubes.
and all the tubes, all that, all the chicken wire, creating the bases. So I, like everybody, you know, no girl pals, right? It was all just guys. I passed everything on guys. My nephew got a wedge. My pal Gordon got a full head 9-section perm because he was into James, so he wanted that curly perm. And he got capped highlights, right? I passed everything. I think everything but a coupe sauvage. I think I passed on a guy.
You did that one on me.
So I wouldn't be far off your haircut at the time, but I did a kind of wee crown version of the magic roundabout thing, and that was my first kind of going, oh, that's amazing. It was really exciting. I could see you guys all vibing off of that as well. So I would hang about. I was always kind of like 2 tiers down, not cool enough though. There was always like somebody else in B Street that was probably getting more of that, and I was kind of like the next. So I was looking for my way in, and my way in was the video camera, because nobody could work one, and my dad had got one for his 60th birthday and couldn't work it, was not remotely in. He was a cine camera guy and couldn't understand that you didn't have to measure the light and the distance and all this kind of stuff. Couldn't understand how it worked. So I basically snaffled it and took it away. I think I'd already videoed Congress. I think I'd done like 92's Congress, the first one in the Shire of Grange or something like that, I think. And then that started, and then it was all going to come in video, and I would do wee edits and bits and bobs. So then, like everybody, you're getting the pizzas, you're getting the coffee, then it's going to mix that colour up, then it's going to take that colour off, then it's all going to quickly wrap dry that for me. And then, so eventually, it all just started getting traction, and then you would start to get to do a wee bit more. But for me, I never, and I still don't really get haircuts in 2 dimensions. I really struggle with photographs. I can do it, I can create it, but don't tell me which one's the shot. Don't tell me which way to face the model or any of that kind of stuff. I'll do everything, but I don't know why that's the one that's going to be the one. Whereas what then happened was I became more of a platform guy. It was, well, stick me on a stage and let me do a whole haircut, and I'll be able to explain why I did it, how I did it, what was the point, and that's really when it went
because
mental,
that just,
basically.
Yeah, I mean, that just grew legs for you. And, you know, I don't know how many decades on, you know, there was a period where you kind of, you know, just, I mean, there's going to be more conversations just about, you know, getting your salon and everything else, and just the time commitments that takes, where you have to step back. We've all been there. You step back. But, you know, coming back into these things, just the abilities, and with the technology that you've kind of always kept up with, and how, you know, again, we're just now at a new stage with all these things where you've got the technology and you have those skills and these abilities. So it's exciting, because it could just always, everything just keeps moving. Yeah. But I think collectively we're all pretty good at keeping up with things and getting the help and finding the people that have got the strains. But yeah, I kind of think that whole, you know, having that as another thing to the art team made that big difference. And it's the managing of the people, because that's, for me, I'm very similar to you in you couldn't do the cut and they know that's the shot. Yeah. You know, I love watching Susie, Diana, and Coco. They just, they have it.
It's just that moment when they all sit around, and there's, you know, I mean, that you used to see Alan and Linda do it as well. They would sit around, and they'd have the wee glass, and they would be looking at the negatives and all that. And they would
go
and they had the light box and all that, and they would be circling it and then going, why?
Why that one?
Why that
over
one?
That one?
Because all 12 of them, it's a nightmare. You get it as well. You know, obviously we get all the images sent through for the awards, and you just go, oh, they're all brilliant. You know, that way. I've always found that tricky, but thankfully my avenue was pretty much set in stone by Alan pretty quickly for sort of my involvement in the art team.
And that's it. So, you know, it's good because it's just enhanced that whole area. And again, it's another string for the youngsters.
Yeah.
Because not everybody is going to want to do one thing or another. But it's a machine in its own right.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be exciting just over the next year, you know, on back of what happened with Japan, and as a result, the new collections and just the students that are going to be coming over from that, and the opportunities and what we did there, and you see the work that's going on, and you say it's important. You know, it's important for the kids coming through to see these opportunities as well. Cool. Culturally, I mean, you know, how do you feel, like, just professionally, you know, has the growth of what you're doing now, you know, have you changed? Do you think you're are you less, more professional, and just in personal growth? Is it? Do you feel you've been consistent?
Can of worms. Well, you know fine well, if consistency and me are two words that do not go together. Alan will be.
Well, you're always consistently late.
I'm always consistently late.
Yeah.
Consistently well dressed, I would hope.
I was going to say consistently booted and suited.
Booted and suited. Trainers are good. Well, the thing. Well, if you're going from the art team perspective, what happened there in the beginning of that was Clothes Show Live.
Yeah.
So 95.
Yeah, that was your first.
That was really the first
taste.
Alan had done a deal with Schwarzkopf and basically got them to put their Salon International stage in the SECC. So the back end of it was a product shop. The other side was a stage.
And it was massive.
It was massive. And we all had to go on and just do a model or do two models. And we were all on a kind of conveyor belt from the salons. There was all a sort of time of who was to be on and when. And then you were just to pack up, go back to the salon, do your client. And I was early, and he started, we're chatting away and we're on stage and I'm doing the model with him, and that was fine. And then he must have phoned back to Buchanan Street and get all my clients moved. Because like, right, you're going to stay, I've got this wee idea, what I want you to do is you're going to be the roving reporter. I want you to go into the crowd and then start firing the questions back at me. So we're going to go up to people and tell them, you know. So we'd come up with this, the back mirror was the smileometer, and the client would see how big the smile was and get the cheers and all this kind of stuff. And that began, and it was just completely natural, right? I mean, it really was. I'd been given the opportunity back in the day to do some wee bits of telly presenting and all that. Through the American football, I did a wee thing with BBC one day, and so I'd had a wee go at that. I'd been on stage with tap dancing and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'd had all of that. So it was just easy, you know, and I hate saying it was easy because I know it's really hard for everybody, and it is really hard. But at that time, it was dead easy, and we were having a laugh and a carry on, and it was great. And then it got to 2:00, and I was on the main stage introducing people on, and Alan's like, right, I'll be back in a minute, just you carry on. He never came back. He just never came. He basically just went, right, that's now what you do, and you're now this guy. And I kind of gravitated towards that. But the evolution of it now is people will always think it's by the seat of the pants. Everybody just thinks you come on and you've got all these wee daft jokes and all that kind of stuff, and you do the thing. Whereas a planet with an inch of its life, it's actually really boringly, heavily planned out, and I would hope that's why it's consistent. The first time we were introduced to Tony Bazan's mind maps, that's what I do. Everything, right? We're sitting about with them on the table, right? There's one there, and I've always worked with that. With the, you know, if I'm on by myself, if I'm on with other people, and I get them to do theirs, and that's always worked for me, and I would hope that means that the level of consistent. I've always got to be daft, right? I've tried to be a grown up. I've tried to do it straight faced.
When?
right? And I have, right? And I love going to watch people that are super serious about it, super passionate and super cool, right? And I can't. I've just got to be a big cheesemonger, and I've got to do it the way that I do it. And either people like it, not everybody likes it, right? I mean, I was lucky enough to be in the Schwarzkopf Young Artistic Team, and the first ever one in '96, and I kind of ruffled a few feathers in that one, and I seriously ruffled a few feathers in the second one, because one of my shticks for a while was if the show was going really flat, I would pull somebody out the crowd and make them cut the model, and then I would go and continue to compare. And I did that down in Blackpool once at the big kind of hairdressing competition event, and got into a lot of trouble for that. So at that point I started to sort of calm down a wee bit and started to take it a wee bit more professional. But it's always been something. I love it. I do love it. I don't get that much of an opportunity. I got to do it a lot in Salon International and stuff. Don't get that huge amount of opportunity. But the problem was, obviously, as we're going to talk about, when I opened the salon, I made the mistake of not doing it at all and cutting off one of my passions within the industry, and that was a massive mistake. I had to do it, but it was a massive mistake at the time.
But then that's, isn't it? Hindsight, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
You
well,
think
it.
back all the different situations, and just sometimes you've got to make decisions that you'd rather not be making, and your choice A or B or C are all rubbish. And that's
That's true.
Life has one door shut, so there's another ready to slam in your face. So brilliant. Okay. Well, at this point, I think I'm now fed up. I'm going to go and steal his chocolate. We're going to have a comfort break.
Comfort break, right? Okay.
Have an interlude, and we'll be back with our next mystery presenter, who will be grilling Riccardo on the next stages of his exciting life. Thanks very much.